Hey, Jennifer.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good. I'm not sure where everybody is.
Well,
There's
this is the
Steve.
first for me that we're starting late for a KW meeting.
Well, I was just having problems with the Zoom
I
opening,
figured.
but
Yeah, I figured.
where's Steve?
There he is.
There we are. Can't hear you though. You're muted. All right, here's Tama.
I think he's cursing.
No, well, almost, because every
Perfect.
time I open my Zoom, the settings have changed. I'm like, I didn't do that. I don't know why that happened.
She's in her class.
There's Tama.
Tama, that's what you look like, Tama, huh?
Yeah. All right, we got Carlos. And is Donna joining us or you're not sure?
I don't know.
Okay.
Hey, Steve, I
Yes.
actually took a shower today and put clothes on. so
I love it. I can
figured-
smell you from here. You smell lovely.
Yeah, it's about time, isn't
All
it?
right,
It's
I'm
been
gonna
7 months.
stop the recording now. No. All right. Should we give Donna a minute or no?
No, go ahead. Move forward.
All right.
Catch
So
up. She's smart.
who did their homework?
I don't
I
remember
did.
what it was. I might have done it though.
Right. So last time we talked about setting our goals, right? Our financial goals.
Oh,
And in order to do that, we were going to do essentially 3 things. Number 1, determine our net worth. Number
Mhm.
2, determine our burn rate. And then number 3, establish our freedom number, right?
hmm
Do we remember that? Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I forgot that was homework for this because we did it during business planning and all that other stuff. So
Gotcha.
it was thematic. It was
All
thematic.
right.
Mm.
So the next piece, once we've figured that out, is then to figure out, like, create a plan for actually doing it, right? So I'm going to share my screen again here. Okay, and I need to move this around because I can't actually see it all. All right. Are you guys, you're not seeing my, are you seeing the
See the-
thing here?
Yeah, we see the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Are you seeing my whole screen or just the window?
We see get after it, 1, 2,
All right, cool.
and everything about it. Yeah.
So yeah, so now that once we've again, we figured out our burn rate, we figured out our freedom number, and then we had to figure out where our net worth is. And then once we know our freedom number, we know what net worth we need to have in order to do that. And that is just done using the 4% rule, right? What is that freedom number? 5,000 a month, 10,000 a month, 50,000 a month, whatever the number is, right? And then it's just a matter of the 4% rule. What are you smiling at, Steve? 50,000 a
it's just-
month?
No, the freedom number, because now that Rick's got it, was it Adam Hergenrother who was talking about this during the regional mega camp? I forget
Yeah,
if it was
100,000 a week.
100,000 a month.
Yeah, 100,000 a month.
He
right?
wants that to be our new freedom number. That's very interesting.
He better get working.
Yeah, I better not sleep.
No, he better get working if that's his
Well-
freedom number.
Yeah, true.
Mhm.
Right. But here's the thing though, Steve, is that's just a matter of math, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
It is. Go ahead, Jen.
yeah, so, I mean, all I did, because I am not a master at mathematics, but I wrote down what was spent, and because it's at the total, it's a total on my statement, what was spent versus what was deposited. And I found that I'm spending more than what I make, or more than what I'm depositing. So I don't know what to do after that. Like
Yeah.
how to figure my net worth and a burn rate and a freedom number.
So your burn rate, Jen, is going to be the amount you're spending every month.
Yeah.
That's your burn rate, right? And if you're spending more than you're depositing, well, that's a really quick, that becomes a problem really, really quickly, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's where this next step comes in handy, right? Which is creating, I like to call it like, I don't know, budgets are one of those things that get a kind of a bad rap a little bit, right? And yet, so I like to think, well, create a plan, and instead of creating a budget, let's not call it a budget because people don't like budgets, right? Let's create a plan, which is out of the amount of money that I make every year, what percentage of it do I want to set aside for savings? What percentage of it do I want to set aside for taxes? What percentage of it do I need to set aside for investing, right? And then what percentage of it do I want to set aside for spending? And this is straight out of profit, straight out of what's it called? Profit first, right?
Yep.
Then we just set that money aside. And the easiest and the best way of doing that is actually just creating separate accounts for those things.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody typically has two accounts, a checking account and a savings account. But what if instead we were to set up a separate account for taxes and we were to set up a separate account for investing? Right? As soon as and then we just don't give ourselves, we give ourselves permission to spend the money that is there for spending. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think Jen, I mean, because this could sound kind of overwhelming. I know Rick Scott hates that word overwhelming, but it's okay. I think trying to create those budgets, those different accounts, Jen. I mean, for you right now, straightforward would be what do you have to spend, right? What do you have to spend to maintain your world right now, your rent, your utilities, things that must get paid. And then compare that to what your income is, see what the difference is, and then decide how you budget the rest.
Yeah, so it's not overwhelming because when I used to work 9 to 5, I had money and I would always keep my money separate.
Right.
So I always had money for everything.
Okay. Okay.
Now that I'm a wonderful realtor with inconsistent income,
Right.
That's where the problem lies.
Yeah. Yep. I get it. And yet you should still treat it the same.
Oh yeah, I know.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had surgery this year and I've only had 3 closings.
Yep.
So it sucks.
Jennifer, you're doing all the right things. The first year is the hardest. And then we'll start falling into place. Everything you're doing now is going to manifest later.
Yeah, I've been a realtor for 16 years.
But not a full-time one,
I am.
Yeah, it's hard.
The only reason I'm able to be full-time is because my husband works.
I need one of those. No, I don't. Now that I think about it, no, I don't.
All right. What, so I'd love to, so Tama, it sounds like you, we've had these kind of conversations in the past. Have you ever done this exercise for yourself?
Yeah, I've been doing this kind of stuff for about 20 years. So this is not new to me. So that's why when you said homework, I'm like, probably didn't register because I had already had it done, to do homework.
You know this stuff, right? That's
yeah, I know this. The one thing that I have not done that, turning into 2022, I'm going to do is I pretty much have a couple of accounts, but I haven't designated this one is checking for budget. This one's saving for reserve. This one is for goals and this one is for taxes. I just have had them based on different reasons. So I think that is what I'm going to focus in on next year is, every time I get a commission, X percent goes into checking because we need this to pay our bills. X goes into savings, X goes into investments, and then X goes into taxes, into the different accounts. On my spreadsheet, it's like that, but not in my bank account.
Yeah. And the danger
you-
with that is it gets really easy. You know, Ben Kinney talks about his buckets, right? He
Right.
thinks of these as his buckets. And he says, part of the issue with having one actual bucket where your money sits and just having it spread out on paper is that it gets really, everything in a bucket gets mixed together,
Right,
right?
right.
When you have to have the separate buckets so you actually have them separate, because when you put something into a bucket, everything gets mixed together. So even though like you were saying, right, you have the money kind of budgeted for and set aside, it's really easy for, you know, for you to look at one account, checking account or one savings account and say, oh, well, I have X number of dollars in there when I want to go buy this whatever, right?
New
Whether
home,
it's
new home.
a new home, right? What you might like, it's really easy to see, okay, well, I have all of this money in this account and I'm going to buy a new home. Well, all right, so that's a partial investment, but it's not all investment, right?
Right.
Buying a new home isn't, buying a personal residence isn't all investment. So if a portion of that money has been set aside for investment, it's like, okay, well, what else, you know, how much of that money was supposed to be for an investment? How much of it was set aside for savings
Right.
for me to use towards purchasing a home, let's say, right? Things like
Right.
that.
I
So
mean,
that's great. That's a
and
great 2022 goal.
yeah, it's intellectually, I do that, but I want to get more deliberate at it. You know, I also, why I'm waiting out to 2022 is because, you know, I did put some things on my credit cards due to moving, like a new couch. So I had something to sit on, you know, and so by the end of the year, I'll have all that paid off. And then I feel like, you know, New Year's on New Year's, and it will be a good way to, okay, we're going to run it. You know, my union savings account is for this, this is for that, and be very deliberate.
Yeah. So you just transitioned us perfectly to the next slide, which is, you know, the question most people ask when they're getting started is, well, is it better to pay down debt or is it better to build up wealth? Right. And the answer to that is never simple because it always depends. Right. So I would say first, yes, like if you've had to be putting things on credit cards, consumer debt, car loans, which is debt on a depreciating asset and tends to be, you know, the interest rates can kind of be all over the place. You know, I see people with 8%, 9% car loans and I'm like, oh my God,
Wow.
like, what are you doing? You know, credit card debt, 20+% interest on credit card debt, right? Let's get that stuff paid because it's high interest and it's not going anywhere. Credit card debt, like it's not an asset, right? It's only debt. With car debt, you have an asset, but it's a depreciating asset, which means unless you're paying down that debt, like, or are you paying down the debt faster than the car is depreciating? Right, then you actually don't have an asset, you actually have a liability.
Yep.
Right. Anybody who buys a brand new car with zero money down actually just decreased their net worth.
Right.
Because, right, we know that on average cars lose about 20 to 30% of their value the minute they're driven off the lot. Well, if you didn't put any money down, well, now you actually just decreased your net worth because you took on an asset that's worth less than the liability, right? Well, anytime you buy a car, technically you're decreasing your net worth because even if you do put money down, you're putting, you know, cash, which is an asset, creating a liability, and then trading it for a new asset that's now worth 20% less than the cash you put down, right? So that's something.
Yeah, and I was really proud of myself because to buy the place, I had zero, besides my car loan, I had zero debt. I had gotten down from a lot of debt 4 years ago to zero debt, and besides car.
Yeah.
And you know, I know I put a few things on the credit card, again, very deliberately, very consciously.
Yeah.
You know, waiting for certain commissions to come in and those kind of things. So my plan isn't.
Well,
I had a plan and I'm
you're putting
executing.
money and you just bought a house and you're putting money into your mom's house in order to sell it and things like that,
to make,
right?
Yeah.
And that'll have a return on that investment. So yeah, I get it. Right.
It's very, very deliberate and very, you know me with my spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And what I have on my side is I don't have car payments. All my cars are secondhand and we paid cash. I don't have credit card debt. The only debt I have right now, and it's a lot, is those freaking medical bills. And I'm not sure how I'm gonna deal with that
Yeah.
unless I get more sales.
Well, that's what these next steps are now, Jen, right? So the first thing is to get clarity around your net worth. What is the debt that you owe? And then the next is to create a plan for it. Right. And here's the thing, like everything should be relative to the top line. Like everything in your plan should be relative to your top line. And what I mean by that is if you're going to make $50,000 or $100,000, right? Everything that you do should be relative to that top line number, that top line income number.
Now, what is that?
Except for
Okay,
your
go ahead.
household expenses, right? So what essentially we're talking about here is saying, okay, if I make $50,000 a year, or no matter what amount of money I'm going to make a year, I'm going to save 10% of it, right? And once I've built my savings up to reach, my reserve number, right? Which, depending on who you ask, should be anywhere from 2 months to 6 months worth of expenses. All right. Dave Ramsey recommends getting to $1,000 and then getting to a month's worth and then building it out to you eventually have 6 months worth of expenses, right? That's one example. All right. Some people think that that's too much. I mean, as a market center, we for years have held 6 months worth of expenses in reserves. And for us as a business, that's a lot of cash that's just sitting there, not really doing anything. So we've always looked at ways to where we can get a better return. So we've actually invested some of that money in very stable investments and things like that. Because as a stable business that has, stable income and things like that, 6 months of reserves is a lot, right? So we've weaned that down to 3 months worth of reserves and then cash equivalent type investments that if in a pinch we needed to, we could cash out. But in the meantime, for as long as we don't need them, will earn us a higher rate of return than having that money just sitting there as cash in the bank, right? So so once you've kind of figured out your numbers, then it's a matter of putting together the plan, which is essentially getting accountable, knowing your numbers, checking your network, staying top of mind with your spending, and then finding people to talk about it with. And so this is the opportunity we kind of all have, and it can be uncomfortable, and maybe it doesn't, and yet it's a key part of it. Normalizing these kind of conversations around money and what are your challenges, what are your opportunities, is one of the most important pieces to it. So I would ask, who's open to that opportunity?
Well, we're doing that, aren't we?
Well, we're
no.
talking about things in theory. What I'm talking about is are who's willing to actually start talking about this stuff openly?
If these
Sure.
guys are.
Yeah,
right.
we have been, I thought.
Okay. Right. So
I mean,
let's,
maybe not specific numbers, but
yeah.
I mean, I
Well,
know
that-
that what Jen has been doing, and she knows what I've been doing, and we're the only
Yeah.
two on this call besides you guys.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny how my Zoom screen is set up right now, because it's Steve right in the middle with, and then me and Carlos flanking you and Jen. So it's like
Well,
Zoom
we like
created-
having hugs.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Zoom hug.
Thank you.
All right. And then having these conversations on a regular basis.
Yeah. And then again, kind of drilling down to what the basic fundamentals, right? Based on what your needs are, you have to make more money, right? I mean, whatever it is, you've got to make more money.
Yeah.
And two ways of doing that are, as far as we're concerned, more closings
Yeah.
Mhm,
and profit share.
mhm.
So, I mean, sounds stupid to say. Dan was very eloquently going through this presentation. Make an appointment every day. every day, make an appointment for your sales business. And once a week, send a referral to your team leaders for some agent that you've come in contact with who you think is worth us talking to.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. I know Jen's got a pretty good pipeline coming to me, working on a couple of them. I got some updates for you, Jen, I'll tell you.
Okay.
So that's great. And you just had a nice closing, Jen, or you're about to have a nice closing, I
I
saw.
had a nice closing on Friday.
Yep. Let's get more of them, right? How can you get more of them specifically?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Got to work around that, and you've got to just make it happen.
Well, the business builders with Debbie Orr has helped me a lot,
Awesome.
because I was behind the 8 ball because of that surgery. And within like 2 days, I felt great after the, 2 days of business building, making the
Yeah.
calls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you keep doing that. There's payoff from doing that. Consistency is what it's all about.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. Dan, very
I'm feeling-
inspirational. Very inspirational. Now I got to write down my $100,000 a month.
And
Goal.
create the plan.
Good grief. Yeah.
All
So
right.
Dan,
Yeah.
so once I have my numbers, what I've spent versus what I deposited, then what do I do?
So the key is then it is around, all right, so you have the numbers of what you've spent and what you've deposited. The question then becomes, okay, well, what do I want the numbers to be? Like, what do I need the numbers to be in order to hit the other goals that we talked about, which is your freedom, which is your
Yeah.
freedom number. All right.
Mhm.
Which is passive income.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's essentially two ways of doing that. So if you were to determine, let's say Steve's $100,000 a year, right? Or $100,000 a month, sorry, not a year,
Yeah.
$100,000 a month, right? That's 1.2 million a year. In order to, so as a freedom number, Steve's freedom number is $30 million. That has to be his net worth. And now there's essentially two ways of accomplishing that $100,000 a month. It's either having $30 million worth of assets, which are invested in some form or fashion, right? Or it's having investments that are kicking off $100,000 a month worth of dividends, income, etc., net income, etc. Right? So most financial advisors, when they're having this conversation, are looking at net worth from a cash standpoint, because they want you investing their money with them, which is then gets invested into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, index funds, etc. Right? But we also have the advantage of real estate investment, right? So, when I was having this conversation with Rick actually last week after that call, he said, well, how many units would I need to have to create $100,000 a month? And I said, Rick, like, it's actually not that challenging of a question to answer. What is your average net income per month per door? $100, $200, whatever it is. And then it's just math. So if let's say net income per property is $1,000 a month, that means you need 100,000 properties. You need 100 properties, right? To bring in 100,000 a month. The interesting thing is that if you were to take the net worth of somebody owning 100 properties that are throwing off about $1,000 a month, you're probably looking at roughly $300,000 properties, which just happens to also be $30 million.
Nice round numbers. Nice
Right.
round numbers.
It's like, so if you owned $300,000 multifamilies that are throwing off $1,000 a month, like the numbers all work out to be the same. Does that make sense? You guys follow me there?
Mhm.
No, sorry.
Not me, but
What are you
Well, in the
talking
big
about?
picture, yeah, the big
I
picture.
mean,
Right.
sort of, but
So you
Jen.
can come at it from both ways. You can come at it from the income and focusing on the income that your investments are throwing off, or you can come at it from the path of what is the investment worth, and growing my net worth to that amount. So if you own a $300,000 property, outright,
Not.
right? That's $300,000 being added, that's $300,000 of net worth. Which means if your goal is $30 million, you need to have 100 of those properties. Or you can come at it from the income standpoint and say, okay, if I want $100,000 and I can go out and buy this property that's going to net me out $1,000 at the end of every month. Well, I need 100 of those properties to get to my freedom number of $100,000, right? So you can come at it from both directions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
So that's the plan, Jen. That's the very long answer to your question, which is, okay, once you have your income and you have your expenses, you have to then figure out, well, what do I need in passive income? And then how do I go about getting that? So if you need, let's say, $5,000 a month, well, you could go out and buy 5 properties that are netting you $1,000 a month. What would you need in order to buy each of those properties? Well, if it's a $300,000 property and you're buying it as an investment, you're going to need a 20 or 25% down payment, right? So you're looking at $60,000 to $75,000 of cash down payment. And now it's okay. How am I going to save that $60,000 to $75,000? What's my timeline look like to buy those 5 properties? If you want to do it in 5 years, that means that you need to save $75,000 a year, right?
Yep.
And now you work your way back into the plan. Okay, so what do I need to earn now in order to put $75,000 aside? And what percentage of my total income am I going to put in, right? So I'm just going to pull up like a quick, actually, you know what? I'll do it on Excel so that I can have it do the math for me. Tama loves Excel.
Mhm.
All right. All right. So let me make this bigger. Well, let me make this so I can actually see it.
I have to leave in 15 minutes.
All right. So let's say your goal is $5,000 per month, just as I'm going to use a round number here, right? Now we know in order to, and we're going to say that that's going to be 5 properties. Properties earning $1,000 per month each. All right. Now, in order to buy those properties, they're worth $300,000. All right. Value per property, which means we need, all right, $75,000 down payment. $75,000 divided by 12 is $6,200 a month. Now, for us to save $75,000 a year, and we're going to say, okay, that we're going to invest, we're going to set aside 20% of our income to investments. That means that what we know is we need to be making $31,000 per month gross income. Does that make sense? For us, if we're only able to set aside 20% of our income towards savings, towards investments, that means that we need to have a gross income of $31,000 per month. Well, here's the thing. What is our average commission? Let's call it 75% or 7,500. We need to do 4 transactions. Now you can start you see how you can start building out a plan by playing with these numbers?
Yeah.
But you
So
gotta
if
be
you
doing
sell-
more than that, right? Because you gotta live too at the same time, right?
Well, no. So because what this does is so this is saying 20% of our income is going to be set set aside. So we still have 80% of our income, right? So if you're going to build out your budget, so building out your budget, right? You've got gross income, all right? And then you're going to set aside for taxes, savings, living, we'll call it, right? We'll just call it budget, which is your living, right? And then investment. And then it's just a matter of, okay, if our gross income needs to be $31,250 a month, let's say, and we're setting aside 25% for taxes. Whoops. All right. We're setting aside 10% for savings, and we're setting aside 20% for our, come on now. All right, for our budget. I'm sorry, for our, that was supposed to go into investment. For our investment, we could then, actually, you know what I'm going to do? This it's easier on myself.
Yeah, see what's left over.
Yep. Yeah, move it there. All right. Budget is going to equal. Oops. All right, that leaves us $14,000 a month to spend. All right. Otherwise known as, you know, I think based on the numbers I put in there, that would have been like 45%. Right. So we're only going to spend 45% of our money because we're setting aside 25% of it for taxes, which brings us up to 50, 60, 70%. We're setting aside 10% for savings, and we're setting aside 20% for investment. And now that gives us the money we need to buy one property every year, which means in theory, after 5 years, we've now set aside the money and invested it each year, right? So in year one, we set aside that $75,000. In year two, we buy our first property and we save another $75,000 to buy our second property. That means that by year 6, we've now bought our 5 properties that are now throwing off $5,000 per month total. And in 6 years, we've achieved financial freedom. Does that answer your question, Jen?
Yeah, that sounds really good.
So the key to you
Jen,
can
just
work these-
start selling 4 houses a month.
That's
Yeah.
all.
That's it.
Well, listen,
That's it.
like everything we talked about last week was around, everything we talk about always starts with getting clarity, right? Because it's something like people who set a goal are 50% more likely to achieve it. People who set a goal and write it down are like 75% more likely to achieve it. Well, you can't set a goal if you don't know what the goal should be.
That's true.
Or are we setting goals that don't get us to where we want to be? Are we setting goals for financial freedom, or are we setting goals to pay our bills? That's another way of putting it. I would expect that most people set goals to pay their bills. Because they sit here and they say, okay, well, my mortgage is X, my car payment is X, or my taxes are X, right? And they add it all up. And then they say, okay, I need to make $100,000 this year. And what they're forgetting is they're forgetting taxes, they're forgetting savings, they're forgetting investment. And then when they turn around and they only make 80, well, now they've added on $20,000 worth of debt, which means next year's number needs to be $120,000 just to get them back where they were in year 1. Right?
What was your original question, Jen? I know I jumped in late.
I have no idea at this point.
Her original question was, so now that I've figured out, so last week when
Right.
we talked about going through your 3 months worth of expenses to figure out what is your average monthly expense. And we call that your burn rate. And then from there, that helps you decide what is your freedom number, which is what is the number that you need of monthly income in order to afford your current lifestyle, right? if you were to receive it in passive income.
Like profit
And-
share.
Well, it could be profit share, it could be investing, it could be whatever, right?
Right.
That becomes your freedom number. Like where the money comes from isn't as important as knowing what the number needs to be.
The numbers, right?
Okay.
And then this, so Jen's question was, well, once you've done that, how do you figure out what to do next? And I said, this is the next step. Once you have the freedom number, now you need to figure out, okay, well, what is going to be my plan to achieve that? Is it going to be profit share? Right. So if you're looking at this and saying, oof, for me to do like I'm selling like 10 houses a year, so not even one a month, right? Or I'm selling 2 a month, 24 houses. In order for me to do this, I'd need to double my business. Well, guess what? There are other ways of earning passive income, such as profit share, right? So another way of looking at this was saying, okay, if I wanted to make $30,000 of gross income, $75,000 or $5,000. I'm sorry. If I wanted to, so this is the business plan for hitting the $5,000. This right here is the business plan for hitting $5,000 per month over a 5-year plan using nothing but commission income. You want to see the business plan for hitting $5,000 a month through profit share? All right. It's $5,000 per month. What is the average income of annual income of having
Capper.
a capper in your first line, right? So this is per month. This is per year.
I would use
Alright.
$4,000, Dan.
I don't think that's correct, but
It's
Are
not
you
much
sure?
less. It's not much less. Not right now. It's not much less.
okay.
It might be 3,800, but
All right, so I'm going to use 4,000 just because it'll make the math easier, right? Per capper, $4,000 per year per capper. Well, here's the math, everybody. 15.
gee, that's the magic number. 15
So,
cappers.
If you want to earn $5,000 per month on average, you need 60,000. That's $60,000 per year. If on average a capper in your first line is the equivalent of $4,000 per year, well, you need to go out and find 15 cappers in your first line. This is the economic model for $5,000 per month of passive income through profit share.
Tell you what, that column looks a whole lot more attractive to me than that first column you wrote.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Totally.
At least it's more straightforward.
Yeah. And it can
So
happen
now
a
the
whole lot
question,
sooner.
so now the question is this. So I recruit, do you know your capper recruiting number? I know your average appointment to hire ratio is what, like 3.5, something like that?
Well, it used to be 2.5. I honestly don't know what it is right now. It was 2.5.
I'm gonna say that Steve and I are not as much of rock stars as we think we are, right? And I'm gonna say, let's say for capper level appointments, let's say for every capper that we meet with, we hire 1 out of 10. I'm gonna be super safe here, right?
Nice. That's super safe.
It's super safe, I would say, right? So if we have a 10% higher rate, how many cappers do you need to introduce us to?
This is gonna,
100,
yeah, it's a
1,500?
scary number.
150 people.
And that's not that bad.
Yeah, and I would actually say that it's probably, because 10% is 1 out of 10 people. I mean, I would say it's probably closer to 6, maybe
For cappers, yeah, probably.
cappers, which is an 18%
I mean,
higher rate.
where can, like, pre-COVID, I think I was at a happy hour 2 to 3 times a week,
Mhm.
right? Running into people all the time outside of KW, right? I feel like nowadays, like, I never see other agents. You know, the only other like non-KW people I talk to are like co-brokers, and you know, that's how many co-brokers you work with is obviously dependent on how many deals you do, right? I'm not going to be able to refer 100. I'm not even going to be able to refer, you know, like 20 people. right? Even if every person I work with is a capper. So like, feel like right now I'm struggling. Like a lot of the people I refer are people within my like sphere who are like newer people, and that's fine. Though I feel like I really struggle to like find people whom I can build a relationship with that are actually like producing. Like that's what I feel like I struggle with. And I don't know where to meet people. I don't know how to like build these relationships, you know, like figuring out the numbers is fine, right?
I'll say this, Marissa, and again, remove limiting beliefs here, okay? I mean,
Yeah.
thinking outside the box, because of the environment we're in, we're getting better, but we're still in it. We're coming out of it. I mean, one way you could do it would be, you know, a lot. If you had to sit down and just make a list of all the agents that you know, okay? Look through the hot sheet every day. See who has a new listing. Call that agent. Bob, hey, it's Marissa. We haven't talked in so long. I see you just put on that new listing on Orchard Street. It looks amazing. I mean, I'm working with a couple buyers right now. Hopefully they'll have some interest in it. I'd love to show it, but I wanted to say, great listing. Just make that connection with that agent and then call Carlos. I mean, it can work. It can work. Absolutely.
You know, actually, I have made like calls like that
Yep.
to other agents just to like chat about a listing, ask questions and that. And most of the time agents are very like happy to talk, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Much
I'll-
rather have that than a crabby client call you.
And I'll tell you that the best way, the best appointments, my greatest conversion to appointments from referral to appointments is when you guys is when they like you. And sometimes that has nothing to do with real estate. You know, that's all on us. You don't ever have to mention Keller Williams. It's just this person actually raved about you and they glow and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And then I ask them for the appointment and they're much easier to say, yeah, as opposed to someone who, you know, it's all on you. Don't worry about recruiting them. Just worry about building a relationship, because you're going to have to see them, whether we recruit them or not. You're going to have to see them. So you want to build that relationship anyway.
Sure.
Hey, guys, I gotta run because I have a physical
All
therapy
right, thanks,
appointment.
Jen.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Jen,
Bye,
get an
Jen.
appointment. Get an appointment from a therapist. Go ahead.
Okay, so
See if they want to buy a house.
here's what I would say to this, right? So Jody sent me a message in the private chat saying that she thinks that the number is exaggerated, and I also agree, because I do believe that total profit share for per capper is around $5,000 to $6,000, and if they're in your first line, you're getting half of that, which means $2,500 to $3,000. That's the numbers that I've calculated for Ridgefield, and so we used 4,000 as an example here, Jody, because it just made the numbers easier. All right. But if you wanted a more realistic example and say, okay, let's say it's $2,500 per capper. Well, you need 24 cappers in your first line. All right. In order to get that. And here's what I've built out. If this number is more realistic and we have a 20% higher rate, that means we need 120 appointments to hire 24 people. If we set one out of every two, if we set an appointment with one out of every two referrals that were given, which I used, again, a very low conversion rate there, I would say that Steve, Carlos, and I are probably way higher at setting appointments than 50%, than 50-50. All right. But that means you need to give 240 referrals. If you wanted to accomplish this in 1 year, you'd have to give us 5 referrals a week, one a day. Now, if you wanted to do it like Steve said, you could do one a week and it would take you 5 years to build this out. So,
And you're gonna lose some along the way too.
what? Not necessarily. I mean, I'll be honest, we don't really lose cappers. We don't tend to lose cappers.
True. And again, this is an analysis just based on cappers coming in and being productive. Those cappers are going to come in and then they're going to refer people.
They're gonna
Remember how
recruit
profit
too,
share
yeah.
works,
Exactly.
right, Marissa? So
Yeah.
again, it's going to be, again, believe in the system because it works.
So one referral per week actually gets you to your freedom number faster than growing your business to at least 4 closings per month and setting aside 20% of your gross income towards investing, and then investing that money into a multifamily property that's throwing off at least $1,000 per month each,
Right.
right? Because this plan here was what, 6 years, right? This is a 6-year plan. This is a 5-year plan. Is 1 referral per week.
Yeah, that frankly requires less work.
And here's the thing, it doesn't require you to manage the property. It doesn't require you to buy the property, find the financing, doing any of that stuff, right?
Hey, Jody,
It doesn't require you making four transactions per month either.
no, Jody, you know your numbers. How many people are in your first line?
Right around 15 or 15.
Okay, and how many are in all the other?
Something like 80, maybe 80 or more.
Yeah, and that's where the power is. That's where the
Right.
power really is.
Right. It's definitely growing this way.
Yep.
You know, ideally, I would love to have people outside, more people outside the Stanford Market Center
Yeah.
and plant some seeds, growing some trees elsewhere.
Sure.
But, you know, I've got a pretty nice downline. Mostly it's Stanford agents and some have some,
Elsewhere.
my first line is all Stanford, I think.
Yeah, right.
And
Got
do
it.
you have?
below that-
How many of those 15 in your first line are cappers?
A good, you know what, go on to, you all talk amongst yourselves and let me pull up the exact numbers. But
Right.
a good number of them, but let me pull up the numbers and I'll talk to you with real information.
Right? So that's part of the reason why we talk about profit share this way. If you were to look at this, sending a 1 referral a week doesn't cost you anything. Right? If you wanted to take the Len Schwartz method, it might cost you $10 a week because he meets them for coffee. Now, whether or not he buys them coffee or he buys himself coffee or whether or not he'd be buying himself that coffee anyway, like without even going down that rabbit hole, if you were to say spend $10 on coffee every week and meet with 1 agent a week and refer that agent to Steve, Carlos, or I, you've got a $500 per year versus $6,250 per year investment. Right? And it's the same money.
Yep.
And based on what we talked about before, using that 4% rule.
Okay,
it's
I've got
like
numbers.
It's like having a $1.5 million invested.
Okay, I've got
in
numbers
your-
for you.
Perfect.
All right, so
Got it.
just FYI, last year profit share, I earned just shy of $40,000.
Okay.
100% club, 100% club.
It's been 15 in my downline for quite a while. And total is 92 all throughout.
Wow.
Out of my 15, hold on, it's scrolling. It's not me, it's scrolling.
It's the stupid.
Yeah, it's been.
It does,
that we
it takes a
have.
long time to pull the KW reports. 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4,
Definitely an exercise for a
5.
patient patience.
2.
Yeah.
Hold on a second, I'm getting there. 25. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. Seven.
Those reports are so slow when you're trying to scroll through them.
Yeah.
Where are we gonna find all these reports when that webpage goes away?
In command.
Thanks.
No, no, that's where they're migrating it all to. It'll be in the reports tab in command.
Okay, so out of the 15, I've got 5 cappers.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I mean, you might be on track because I don't have 15 cap. My first line is 15, but I don't have 15 cappers. But
Yes.
it's probably not really realistic to say, hey, just go out and get 15 cappers in your
Right.
downline.
Well, that's the with
It's a limiting belief,
Steve
Jody.
mentioned.
Oh,
was what
sorry.
Steve mentioned before. What'd you say? Sorry, Marissa.
Limiting
It's a
belief.
limiting belief.
Limiting belief, right?
Oh, you know
Why
what? So
not?
I apologize. So I just haven't gotten 15 cappers in my downline yet.
You just haven't done it yet.
Exactly.
Yes, they're
The
the
con-
15, you're gonna convert the other 10 into cappers.
There you
Well,
go.
that could be two. I need to convert a couple to full-time agents first.
Right.
Look,
Yeah,
honestly, look, just to go back to what Dan was saying, okay, so the numbers to make $60,000 a year, it's gonna take a while to get there, and certainly to build 15 full cappers in your first line, that would be amazing. But that said, I will say that having 15 in my downline with, what did I just say, 5 cappers,
Mhm.
$40,000 a year in income, that's pretty cool.
That is very
Nothing to
cool.
sneeze at.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
That's
'Cause
okay.
It's still like having $1 million invested in some sort of,
Yeah.
Yep.
investment vehicle. It's still about $1 million worth of net worth, $40,000 a year.
Look, I have to say, when I first came to KW, I always say I never really, I heard about the profit share thing. I never really necessarily believed it. I kind of thought two things. First of all, as I want to downsize my active income, it would be pretty cool to have inactive income growing. That would be a really cool thing if it all works, which certainly it seems to be. That would be number one. And number two, it's more money than Coldwell Banker ever gave me for referring somebody to them when I was working for them, right? So even like the first few months when I was literally getting 26 cents or $5 or something like that, I always thought, you know what, it's still more than Coldwell Banker ever gave me for helping them grow their business with other agents, right? So it grows over time. It grows over time. It's sort of like that whole thing with invest money in, when you're a kid, you learn to invest money so that that money just grows.
Yep.
You sort of put people in your downline, and eventually, now I have 90 people in my downline, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Awesome. All right.
Good
That's our-
session.
That's our session for the day, everybody.
Thank you.
One
Hey, do
referral
we-
per week. See
Do
you
we
in
have
3
homework that I'm
years.
gonna forget about?
I'm sorry?
Do we have any
Emma wants
homework
homework.
No.
that I'm gonna forget about? And
Yeah,
do
the
anyway?
homework is who is your referral for this week?
Yeah, there you go.
I have one for you.
Perfect.
All right. It's
Thank
about
Marissa
you.
already
time,
gave
right?
me one. Marissa, you gave me one. I'm working on them.
I gave you one. I'm gonna make those calls. That was a great suggestion, Steve.
Good, do it. Awesome.
Love it.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
guys. Bye.
Hi,
Ciao.
Marissa, anyway. Hi,
Hi,
Marissa.
Kim. Bye.
Bye.